Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon, Department of English, VSSD College, Kanpur. We are discussing paper English language teaching and the module Developing Teaching Materials, which has been written by Sandhya Tiwari, is telling us a lot more about teaching materials. Teaching material and teaching aids, they are very important to make learning of experience a rich experience that way. But how to develop that material? That is to be done in this particular module. To create awareness on the role of materials in the teaching and learning process will be discussed. To enhance the awareness of developing teaching materials useful to teach English and to assess the relevance of material, along with to develop the ability to design material as per need analysis, some tips will be given. The role of materials in the learning activity of language classroom with various perspectives on material development, factors influencing the effectiveness of syllabi and materials, and ways to choose, adapt and assess materials for enhancing and testing the LSRW skills, frequently used terms in teaching material development, and different kinds of material and their functions. They are the learning outcome of this particular module. The emergence of technological aids have altered the educational realms, and the field of ELT is not an exception to this phenomena. Language teaching has undergone drastic transformation. Availability of e-resources which are accessed not only by the teachers but also by the students. Striking a decent chord between course and course material is confronted across the continents by the ELT practitioners and teachers as a challenge. Now, when we talk about material development is both a field of study and a practical undertaking. As a field of study, it involves with the principles and procedures of design, implementation and evaluation of language teaching materials. As practical undertaking, material development refers to anything applied or used or adopted to facilitate the teaching learning process. The word syllabus is commonly used as the material. Now, Brumfitt summarized all these things in the following 6 points. Number 1, what is the syllabus as a teaching material? That syllabus is the specification of the work of a particular group or class. It specifies the entry-level behavior and the terminal behavior of the learners. It also specifies the time in which this has to be achieved. Number 3, it specifies the order in which the material has to be taught. 4, it can only specify what is taught, but it cannot organize what is learned. It is negotiable and adjustable. It is a public document and an expression of accountability. So whenever we talk about material development, then use of material according to the syllabus is very important. Materials, they can be developed, they can be reshaped in the class itself as a teaching technique. But for that, which material to use and which should be avoided, it should be according to the syllabus concerned. So syllabus is again a very important material to be used in the classroom. You can see in this particular figure that materials at work plan, materials in process and outcome from material, they are equally important. Now the materials are like the core, and generally the entire teaching learning process revolves around them. The course material decides the plan of action, process and the product. In this way, the syllabus can ideally be considered as plan of action, while the materials used in the classroom represent the learning process and the outcome is the testing and evaluation material. Establishing goals and objectives in the material development is not so easy. In developing the teaching material, the clear understanding of aims and objectives work like a radar. Aims are the goals of a course of instruction. Objectives are the description of what is to be achieved in that particular course. Let us look at the following example. When the aim is to develop the reading comprehension skill of the learners, then the objective is after completing the course or the term, the learner should be able to read an advanced level passage of 500 words in 5 minutes, and he or she should be able to answer reasonably well a minimum of 80% questions based on the passage. So now, when the instructor deals with this particular kind of material and he practices with the student, then that may be done with keeping the outcome, keeping the result in mind. Reading, we all know, is not a passive process. It is an active process, because while reading, the understanding should be a part of that particular reading. So when a child reads a passage of 500 words and then he is supposed, just after comprehending that particular passage, he is supposed to explain or answer those questions, then only the reading portion may be taken as the complete process of understanding. So whenever you use any material for that, instructor should keep that thing in mind. Now, what is the role of teaching materials? We all know that material should facilitate learners' ability to study and self-investigate. Generally, most teaching situations depend on the textbook. So, we should use materials other than textbook also to facilitate the learning in a better way. Now, what is the role of teaching material? We can just talk more about it, that a good textbook carries with it inbuilt mechanism of embedded learning. It should possess structural scaffolding that ascertains desirable outcomes even in situations where the teachers are inexperienced. Good materials are the base of opportunities for learning. Sometimes when the textbook is not so interesting, sometimes when the chapter is not that inviting, so it mostly depends upon the materials used, that they can just create the interest for the learners. They can just facilitate the learning process according to the capability of the instructor as well as the capability of the learners. So various materials like textbook, supplementary book, workbook, teacher's resource, they are the traditional methods, traditional materials. And along with them, some audiovisual aids, some other materials can be chosen by the instructor as per his or her choice and understanding. When we take worksheet, audio video ads, online resources, blogs, webinars, WhatsApp, mobile and computer aided materials, so in all that, the purpose is to expose the high-end learning through all these resources. Now when we talk about various materials and their functions, I will try to explain it with one example. Suppose we all know about William Shakespeare's book Tempest. Whatever we are teaching through this book as material, if we are teaching the learners who are very young, then a simple story will do, that there was a king and there was a daughter, Mirinda, and she comes across with some prince in the jungle. There is a Caliban who was a monster and something like that. That will just be a story where the names of actual characters will be mentioned for young, very young learners. Now, at the second stage, when at the intermediate level, learners are supposed to learn some dialogues, some good words. So the same story in the simplified version as the paraphrase mode can be taught to them with the use of dialogues. Like Mirinda said, Caliban said, Ariel said, Prospero was of the view. So all these things will take care of sentence construction, use of good words, use of fine teaching material that way. So that may be good for the intermediate learners. But finally, for higher education, when we come to teach this book, this particular book should be taught in the original text. Like whatever Shakespeare wrote, they must have the feel of the Shakespearean language. How in Elizabethan age the language was being used, how it is different from the present day English, that should be taught to them in order to understand the text in a better way. So the same material is same, but it has been devised by teacher in such a way that the learner's need is fulfilled, and the learners, they learn it properly as per their background, their age and learning capabilities. So teachers, learners and material, there is a nexus. The materials are the tools which will be useful for both teachers and learners, because teaching will also be interesting. Teaching will also be easy when the teacher is using the material. Learning will also be easy and interesting when learner finds teaching with the use of the material. So thus the role of material is that of an instrument serving the dual purpose. As with any tool or instrument, the effective utilization depends on the user and the tool itself. For this reason, while developing materials, immense care should be taken to avoid all sorts of ambiguity. Utmost precision should be taken, because that will be the sample which consciously or unconsciously gets absorbed by the users or learners. In order to get the optimum advantage of the materials used, it is essential to know how to adapt, enrich and interpret. In selecting the materials for tasks, keep in mind relevance of the material, authenticity of the material, focus on process, potentiality for review and assessment, feasibility, and finally learner's proficiency. Now there is a paradigm tilt. What is that? The effects in recent changes in English language teaching in India exemplify the fact that ELT is going through the advanced years of communicative era and early years of digital learning. Therefore, the debate between acquisition versus learning, simplification versus authenticity, structures versus functions, fluency versus accuracy gain momentum. The metamorphosis in the role of a teacher from the giver of knowledge, grammar or translation, and the model speaker like audiolingual, to whatever of a facilitator like communicative language teaching, the teacher is now discouraged from doing anything that the learners can do for themselves. So the self-teaching is a major part of the learning process. The role of learners, it has also undergone tremendous change and has taken different dimensions. In the grammar translation method, the learners were expected to acquire knowledge about the language and its literature. They were more or less expected to imitate the native speaker's style. It can be understood that the learner's role has emerged from passive to active, and learners are no longer just the receiver, but they are the discoverer, they are the contributor, they are the persons who are also handling the knowledge process in a different way. In the Western education system, the decline of the textbook is like a movement, and that has spread to other countries as well. The tendency of monolithic textbook diminished, and it paved way to less rigid forms of instructional materials. These range from various types of supplementary materials to inventories of ideas for teachers and to modular materials. Let me make it more clear that what do we mean by absence of textbook? Then what are the material that we are going to just apply for the classroom teaching? Can we imagine our class without the textbook? Yes. When the teaching and learning process takes place in such an atmosphere where learner is free to learn and teacher has also got complete freedom to teach that particular topic without the boundaries, then the learning and teaching experience becomes so lively and so interactive that both of them enjoy learning that particular thing. In absence of the textbook, the help can be taken from certain other materials, especially in the classroom, in the language classroom. Like, for example, I am going to teach them summary, how to summarize. It is not necessary that I should give them a worksheet. It is not necessary that I should give them a book. Okay, this is the passage and now you summarize it, read it, then summarize it. I can show something, a picture or a documentary film or something like that on the audio visual mode. They can watch that particular thing, particular movie that may be of their interest, and then they may summarize and they may write whatever they have seen and experienced and what they feel about it. So in this way, not only it will be summary, but it will be a creative piece of writing by them. They will take help, but they will not just try to imitate whatever is written. They will not try to catch things. Rather, they will exercise their brain and do it in a better way, so that will be the best use of language exercise. Now, in any teaching material, one can apparently notice the increase in difficulty level. The difficulty can be in terms of language, expression, or content. Gradation of material is good as it provides a natural evolution and learning process. Now, in simple terms, what do you mean by gradation of language? Whatever material you use for teaching students of class 1, you cannot use it for class 12 or vice versa. Language is being taught in class 1 as well as in class 12. What is the difference? Language is same, but only change in it is there in the gradation of material. Suppose we use a nursery rhyme in class 1, that will be of simple nature, the words used will be simple and the sentence construction will not be complex. While for class 12th, the meaning, the poem used will be more pragmatic, figure of speeches, various allusions, various literary techniques will be there. So it depends upon the gradation of material a lot. So it is a second pedagogic practice which should be followed while preparing materials. What is taught generally is followed by in what order it is taught. Everything selected cannot be taught at once for apparent reasons. Something must come before, like prerequisites, and after something else. Now, language is a system we all know, an entity in itself. It is not just a collection of some words or sentences or something without having, without creating, without leaving any particular meaning. That is why a methodological approach in designing the material is very, very important for the success of course. Everything new cannot be presented. That is why whatever is easier or linked to the past exposure should be the starting point where you design the material for the students, so that the link should not be broken, the chain should not be broken. Students, they are in the position to relate this new experience with the past experience. When we talk about linguistic gradation of material, we should be clear in our thought process that it should be scientific. We take help of the words that carry meaning, and those words must have some connections as well. For example, while teaching vocabulary, if I want the beginner, so the beginner may have happy as a simple word. He may understand it. We can show through gestures what is being happy. I'm smiling, I'm happy, or I'm sad. So he may just have the differentiation between these two things. When we move ahead, then we may use the synonyms for those very expressions. We may use the word glee, and the child understands that happy and glee he can use simultaneously for particular situation. Then sad, upset, gloomy. So through various words for one expression, child will feel at liberty to use the material in a desired state. He will have more and more command over language by using synonyms and antonyms, by using syntax, by using other formats of the grammar. He must know, if I say I write a letter and a letter is being written by me, these are the same expressions, but way of speaking is different, way of writing is different. So when to use what, that should be taught in a very beautiful way, and then only the use of material will be successful. Now, content and cognition graded material is also there. Like cognitive grading is another type of grading generally used in any course material. Keeping in cognizance the average IQ of the learners, the material should be prepared. This type of grading is justified on purely psychological ground. One of the important aspects for this gradation is the rationale that each new item should confirm what has been taught and should prepare the learners for what is to come. In good gradation, new material would strengthen the known material by the process of facilitation set by Mackay in 1956. Learners find it easy to grasp if material is designed in a systematic and regular series. The irregular or unconnected ones lead to error of analogy. Responses associated with one stimulus will also be associated with similar ones. The greater the similarity, the stronger the association. Therefore, gradual unfolding of the materials enhances the learning patterns. Psychologists and behavioral scientists have also emphasized that a greater number of items can be learnt in a specific time if they fit into established and interconnected patterns, said by Miller. And Miller made it clear that how the teachers should adopt teaching through materials. Now there is another thing, grouping and sequencing. Irrespective of the kind of gradation principles on which they are based, all methods include in designing materials like some sort of grouping of these materials and an arrangement of these materials into some sort of sequence. Any one material cannot be successful for all kind of teaching. So whatever you teach, you may use different materials or you can group them for teaching the same thing also. Now, simplified and adapted materials. It is important to note that there was a movement in materials in 1960s when teachers and ELT exponents felt the need for adaptation. That is, they wanted to change the prescribed textbooks or materials to make them more customized as per the learner's level of reception and specific teaching needs. Matson and Bowen said, I quote, "Adaptation is often required in order to increase motivation for learning by making the language more real, the situations more relevant, the illustrations, visual or printed, more vivid and interesting." Unquote. Now you see, that is the basic reason why after a fixed interval of time in every college, school or universities, the textbooks are being changed. The course material is also being changed, keeping the development of the subject, development of the learners in mind. The original texts are often rewritten, keeping the needs, purpose, and the age level of the readers. West in 1964 described the criteria of a successful adaptation as follows. Stage 1, introduction to reading for pleasure. 2, reading for enjoyment. And 3, reading with foretaste. And 4, reading to read unadapted books. These 4 stages have specified word levels and also criteria for their selection. Like at stage 1, vocabulary 480 to 750 head words. And criteria: can the learner read the materials without too much difficulty? Is it suitable to the learner's age? Then stage 2, vocabulary 1000 to 1500 or 1800 head words. And criteria: is the book enjoyable still? Can the teacher himself enjoy it in its adaptation form? Stage 3, vocabulary 1800 to 2300 head words. And does the book, without being too difficult, convey some flavor of the original? Is it an effective appetizer? Stage 4, lead into an unadapted book. Vocabulary 2000 to 2500 words for the explanatory passages. Does the book present the original author? Does it present the original in an assimilable and enjoyable form? So that is to be judged. Now, when you develop material for target group or target outcome in mind, so that is also worth discussing. These materials are delivered not only in conventional print form but also through new technologies. It is important to keep in mind the target group of the material to be developed. Learners, they too bring to learning their own beliefs, goals, and attitudes which influence whatever they learn. Understanding the learner's knowledge and rationale will facilitate the success of material development. The task of developing teaching material is multidimensional. In order to achieve the desired success in developing materials, clarity of aims and objectives is important. Once this clarity comes as explained, the thorough target group analysis should be taken up. If the course is predetermined, then the adaptation or simplification strategy can be applied. The teacher should demonstrate sensitivity to learners' need and expectations in the various stages of material development and use. Now, to conclude, we can just take certain things in mind that materials should not be static. We should keep on developing materials. We should keep changing material for the benefit of learners and for to make their interest alive in that particular learning process. It all depends on how the material has been developed and how the developed material has been used by the instructor. Instructor, they should also take care that they should also change with the changing material. The way they are putting that material into practice, that should also be taken care of. The use of language, the more and more use of audio video materials, the use of mall and call technologies, all these things just create a different atmosphere and a different impact on the learning process as well. So English language teaching, this process of English language teaching can be strengthened with the development of the material. The researchers are going on. The researchers are too busy in enhancing the material and its capability and capacity of the learners. Thank you for visiting EPG Pathshala.